The Dallas Stars kick off a 3-game homestand tonight against the Nashville Predators. On today's show, I'm joined by Nick Morgan of the Locked On Predators podcast to talk all about this game. We'll talk about the teams as a whole, talk about some players to be on the lookout for, and talk about our overall predictions for tonight's matchup. It's another crossover edition of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis. It is Wednesday, November 10th, and it is once again Dallas Stars game day. Like I said in the cold open, kicking off a 3-game homestand against the Nashville Predators, Philadelphia Flyers, then the Detroit Red Wings. But it all starts tonight against a team that has become one of the bigger rivals for the Dallas Stars, and one of my favorite rivalries in the NHL, obviously because I love the Dallas Stars. Definitely not one that you'll hear NHL people talk about as one of the oldest, most storied rivalries, because both of these teams fairly new, each to their respective cities in the grand scheme of things. But at the end of the day, two of the most entertaining teams to watch when they meet up. Never really a dull moment when the Predators and Stars meet up, especially January 2020. You see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, I have my Tyler Seguin Winter Classic jersey hanging up behind me. One of the best hockey games of that season for the Stars. Had all the emotions in it, from penalties, comebacks, whatever might have you. Always a good time when the Predators and Stars get together. But thank you for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by. Leave a like and comment on the show if you like what you hear. Subscribe and follow the podcast if you do not do so already. But without any further ado, let's jump into today's crossover conversation with Nick Morgan of Locked On Predators. All right, everybody, welcome in, Stars fans and Predators fans alike. I'm Dane with the Locked On Stars podcast, and I'm joined right now by Nick Morgan of the Locked On Nashville Predators podcast. Nick, how's it going today?
It's going good, man. Ready for an interesting game tonight. It seems like it's always a party of sorts when the Preds and Stars play each other.
Absolutely. Two teams that, like you said, interesting seems to always be the word. Never a dull moment when these two teams clash on the ice, for sure. So very exciting. They're playing their first game of the season as divisional rivals back in the Central Division. They were paired up last year in the realignment in the Wild Division that also, contained teams like Tampa Bay and Carolina. But things are back to normal, air quotes, so far this season. But kind of jumping. What's that?
I said the good old Central Division.
Yeah, the good old, as if the Central Division this season is any easier than what the Stars and Preds were dealing with last season. Still a lot of really good teams to fight alongside. So been an interesting season so far, to say the least, for these teams. But kind of jumping right in, talking about the teams as a whole. Nick, what would you say is a strength of this Nashville Predators team as of right now?
Physicality. You kind of saw it the other night with Alexander Carrier, his goal against the Chicago Blackhawks. This is a team that does not get pushed around easily by other teams, and that causes them to kind of get into tight spaces and be able to kind of put their foot on the ground. Sorry if you hear a dog in the background. That's my little bundle of joy.
Hey, that's okay.
But yeah, if you watch them play on the ice, they're starting good scoring chances with good physical play, whether that's solid forechecking, knocking guys off the puck, whether that's somebody like Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson kind of possessing the puck behind the net and kind of like fighting off defenders, trying to draw the puck loose. That's kind of been a weird new point for the Predators. It's kind of a change from what we've seen the past couple of years. But they've scored a lot of goals that way by just kind of starting off with a physical, aggressive presence.
Yeah. That's I feel like that's an underrated quality of any kind of hockey team, and especially I think a team like Dallas. Something they struggle with is being taking care of the puck, and a lot of the goals they've given up recently have been as a result of either sloppy passing or just kind of like carefreeness with the puck, if you will. So hopefully that's something that Dallas can fix, as to not give up too many goals to the Predators in that sense. But yeah, what would you say kind of a weakness of the Predators team is, kind of flipping the question on you?
A weakness of the Predators right now. Humphrey, stop. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
A weakness of the Predators right now is it's kind of the antithesis to physicality. It's discipline. The Predators right now, even though their penalty killing is very good, the penalty killing seems to be out on the ice a whole heck of a lot. My buddy Sean Smith, who I work with on the forecheck, kind of said it best. You want your team to play with a bit of an edge, but you don't want to cross that edge into making stupid penalties or stupid mistakes. And we've seen the Predators kind of prone to doing that. And, obviously taking a bad penalty at a bad time is going to get your team shorthanded. That's of course. But the other thing that does is kill momentum. We've seen the Predators a couple times this year have a good flurry of chances, good pushing, kind of steal momentum late in periods, and then they'll take a penalty, and then it just swings back the other way. So that's something that I think could be an Achilles heel, something that I'm sure Dallas would be more than happy to jump on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, kind of segues perfect into, the strength and also weaknesses of the Stars team. I think the strength as of right now, I feel like it's changed as I've done either crossovers or, recorded bits for other teams. The strength of this team is ever changing because this team is, I kind of described it yesterday as like the season has been like a roller coaster for the Stars. And I think their strength as of right now is their power play, which was not the case early on in the season. But I think now that they've scored at least one power play goal, if not more, in their last 4 or 5 games. So they found a whole lot of luck whenever they've had the man advantage, but haven't necessarily, been successful in, getting the man advantage, which of course, the main focus of playing hockey isn't necessarily to draw penalties. But it's nice when it happens. The Stars haven't had too many games where they've had, just countless opportunities, to be on the man advantage. But, the past few games when they've done it, despite a lot of the results either resulting in losses or overtime losses. It's nice to see that, Dallas is able to put that together. But, I think the weaknesses of the Predators and the Stars are almost the same thing. I talked a lot yesterday on a Tuesday show for Locked On Stars with Saad Youssef of The Athletic, who writes for the Stars. We talked a lot about how this team is, given up a lot of penalties over the last few games. I think they just finished a 3-game road trip in Canada, and I think it was like 30 penalty minutes across all 3 games. And especially their most recent outing in Vancouver on Sunday, I believe 3 of the 6 goals they surrendered were, on the penalty kill. And it was a lot of guys that Saad made a really good point of saying that guys that, you don't want anyone to commit a penalty, but, if someone is, you want it to be, a forward who isn't necessarily going to be, a factor on the penalty kill. But we have guys like Luke Glendening and Yanni Hakanpää, Ryan Suter, committing penalties and, spending time in the box when if we are going to be down a man, we need those guys out of there on the ice. So, could be really interesting if both of these teams are going to be spending substantial time in the penalty box. Could end up maybe being a high scoring affair.
Yeah, which is kind of the complete different of every Predators Stars game that we've seen the past few years. It seems like it's always kind of just been a defensive battle down to the wire, but it seems like this could be an opportunity for some high flying back and forth action.
Yeah, absolutely. And these teams always, they're, I don't know if bad blood is necessarily the right word, but there always is, something a little extra on the line with these teams. And so even if it's not traditional penalties or it's fights, I feel like, there's going to be fireworks hopefully in the net, but also just amongst the players as well, which always makes, for entertaining hockey to watch. So yeah, should be really interesting to see, how, those strengths and weaknesses show themselves on, on tonight's game. But coming up next on today's show, we're going to take a deep dive into the rosters of each team and talk about some players to be on the lookout for in tonight's matchup. But before we do that, I want to take a moment and say thank you to some of the sponsors of today's episode. And the first of those is Shopify. In case you don't know, Shopify is a complete commerce platform that lets you start, grow, and manage a business. The subscription-based software allows anyone to set up an online store and sell their products. Shopify store owners can also sell in physical locations using Shopify POS or point of sale app and accompanying software. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big businesses, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility, and Shopify helps you make your entrepreneurial dreams come true. Shopify has the tools and resources that you need to make it easy for any business to succeed from down the street to around the globe. Shopify powers over 1.7 million businesses from first sale to full scale, reaching customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnhl, that's all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnhl right now. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. It's the holiday season, and that means that there's tons of good food to go around with your family and your friends, but maybe you want a yummy dessert that isn't so quite full, jam-packed of calories and sugar. Well, it's the perfect time for a Built Bar. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert, and you can feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end more often than not. Most Built Bars, on the other hand, are only 130 calories and only have 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. So replace that coconut cream pie with a coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any slice of pie. You can go to built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Jumping back into today's Stars Predators crossover episode with Nick Morgan of Locked On Predators. Going to take a quick moment to discuss some of the players to be on the lookout in tonight's matchup. And Nick, who's a guy on, or multiple guys on Nashville's roster that Dallas Stars fans should be aware of, a guy that you think could potentially have a big night in tonight's matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two, just because I'm so generous and I want the Stars fans to really be on the lookout for these guys. The first one is Tanner Jeneau. He is a guy who broke into the Preds lineup late last year. Initially, taxi squad injury situation, but he really earned his spot as the year went on. This year, he's kind of earned a permanent role on the Preds team. He's been on like the 4th/checking line, but Jeneau's a guy that has a lot of offensive punch. And with the unfortunate injuries to Philip Forsberg and Nick Cousins, he's getting a chance to move up the lineup. He's going to be playing with Ryan Johansson from the line rushes this morning. He can put the puck in the net. And we talked about the Preds playing physical. He's a guy who likes to rush. He's a guy that likes to push, and he can kind of get to the front of the net, some of those dirty areas, and make plays and finish plays. So he's somebody that I would not be surprised to see find the net tonight. The other guy is just somebody who I think is fun to watch, and I think Stars fans should get a kick out of watching him. That's on the blue line. That's Alexander Carrier. He has kind of come out of nowhere over the past year and a half. He was sort of a middle of the road prospect for the Predators. Kind of earned a spot late last year due to some injuries to like Mark Borowiecki. Roman Josi went down for a while and he filled in. He just every game he plays, he just seems to be a little bit better than the game before. He's a guy, a lot of people thought maybe he would just kind of wind up as the 5th, 6th defenseman this year. He's wound up 3rd on the team in minutes, averaging just over 20 a game. We thought he was just kind of an offensive juggernaut, kind of a power play, offensive quarterback type defenseman.
Yeah.
Now he's like, a defensive juggernaut. He plays on the penalty kill and power play. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's done it all. I would say behind Roman Josi and UC Saros, Carrier has probably been the Preds MVP this year, so watch out for him.
Yeah, yes, that's certainly good to know from watching this game. Sounds like you guys have a lot of weapons that can, at least put the puck on net and put pressure on whoever's going to be in the net, for the Dallas Stars. And speaking of goalies, I don't know if there's any kind of indication or announcement of who's going to be in goal for tonight's game for Nashville. But what has kind of been the goalie situation for the Predators, or how has the goalie situation kind of unfolded for the Predators so far this season?
Yeah, it's been UC Saros all the way. The Preds did sign David Riddick in the offseason. Big save, Dave, our favorite backup goalie. He will probably get a start. I don't know if it's going to be tonight or tomorrow, but the Preds have a back-to-back against both Dallas tonight and then St. Louis tomorrow night. So I would assume he's probably going to get his first start of the season. He's had COVID issues to start the year. So unfortunately, he hasn't been able to get on the ice yet. But Saros has started, I believe, all but 2 games this year, and he's still on the show. That was kind of one of the question marks Preds fans had going into the year, just because UC Saros really hadn't spent an entire 82 game season as the guy. When that happens, some guys are just better starting 50 to 55 games, kind of a 1A, 1B. We weren't sure if he was going to be like Pekka Rinne and starting 70 games in a year. But so far he's proven that he can take the number 1 role and run with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a tough back-to-back, having to play, Dallas and Nashville are always competitive. Then to have to go in St. Louis, you said?
It is in St. Louis, yes.
Ooh, that's a brutal back-to-back.
These are the last 2 games of a 6-game road trip that also included Western Canada. So
wow.
All kinds of fun for the Predators this week.
Yeah, I should have known. I knew you guys were in Western Canada because we were following you for a little bit. We played Calgary after you guys, and then we played Vancouver after you guys. So we've just been following you around, and now, they're finally meeting up together, the Stars and Predators.
Yeah, it's just kind of the last dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of the last little bit before you guys get to return home. But to kind of flip, I guess the question onto myself of players to watch out for, just to give Preds fans a little insight into the Stars roster. I'll give you 2 guys as well, because I was torn going in of which guy I wanted to cover. But since you gave me 2, I'll give you 2 as well. And the first guy that I want to talk about is a guy that is meeting and or exceeding the expectations of Stars fans this season, and that is Miura Hastening, a guy that's been on Dallas's blue line, been probably the most consistent player on the team. Last I checked, he leads the team in minutes on the ice. One of the best skaters on the team for sure, but I would argue, you could maybe top 10 in the NHL when it just comes to his speed and his ability to close out. There's been so many instances this season where, a team has maybe had a breakaway opportunity with one guy, and Miro's just, in the snap of a finger, he's right there with them when it looked like, there was too much distance in between the 2 players. And so Miura Hastening, a guy that can, play really well on defense, a really good penalty killer when he's not the one committing penalties. But also a guy that can shoot pretty well from the blue line. And, even if his shots aren't always going in, he gives his team an opportunity for a rebound shot, or, just puts the puck in a good spot for the Stars to have a chance to score the puck. And then a guy kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of Miura Hastening, at least numbers wise, is Roope Hintz, who had a pretty good season last year, even though he was battling some injuries. And then this season has been healthy and played in just about every game. I don't think he's missed a game yet, but has yet to score a goal, despite many Stars fans and even Stars members of the media, including myself, projecting him to potentially lead the team in points. And so it's been really frustrating to watch because he's had a really, a plethora of opportunities to score, and even had some, one-on-one moments with other teams' goalies, and the goalie, makes, one of the best saves of their career, because Roope is getting opportunities and he's taking good shots, but he must have upset somebody, and someone has a Roope Hintz voodoo doll somewhere, and they're just not letting him score. So hopefully, fingers crossed, tonight is the night that he's able to at least get one in, because I think he just needs to break through that barrier, and then the rest will take care of itself. But those are definitely 2 guys to be on the lookout for tonight in tonight's game.
Yeah, judging by past history between the Preds and Stars, Roope Hintz is a guy that I feel like definitely Preds fans cringe a little bit when they hear his name. Just I think they think back to that 2019 playoff series, and I'm like, oh God, not this guy again. Did want to ask you about one guy
Sure.
Because Dallas lately has been a good collector of great Nashville Predators alumni, beloved Nashville Predators alumni. Ryan Suter. How has Ryan Suter been in Dallas this year? I know he was kind of had the weird offseason with getting bought out from that mega deal by Minnesota. How has he fit in?
Yeah, he's doing okay. He's kind of we brought in a lot of guys this offseason. And I feel like, he was brought in because we lost Jamie Alexiak in the expansion draft to Seattle. So we, and he was one of our better defensemen. And so, he's done fine. I feel like he hasn't necessarily like exceeded expectations. Obviously, he's 36 years old, so he's, not what he once was. But I mean, he's a guy that, provides good veteran presence. And I think his presence on the team will become more valuable as the season, kind of drags on. And if the Stars team is able to make it to the postseason, I think he's definitely a guy that, the Stars will benefit from having, just because, he's been around for so long and he's, hasn't won a title yet. And so I know that he's, hungry to get that accomplished. And so, but he's done fine. He's played alongside John Klingberg quite a bit. And I think they pair really well together. And, they normally are the first defenseman to take the ice, and that gives, Esa Lindell and Miura Hastening time to be on the bench to start the game. But, then they're out pretty quick, 2-3 minutes into the game. And so I think he has one goal through the first 11 games of the season. And it was kind of, I don't think it was counted as a goal until like a day after our last game against Vancouver. I thought it was a shot that bounced off Jamie Benn. I mean, that's even what the broadcast indicated, but they went back the next day and credited him with the goal. So not putting up any monster numbers at age 36, but I don't think he's hurting the team in any way. But yeah, Ryan Suter just kind of hanging out for as of right now. We'll see what kind of impact he makes as time goes on.
Yeah, and I'm sure he and Alex Radloff can share fantastic Predators stories from back in the day. I'm sure Preds fans here will just absolutely eat that up.
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely sure of that. But we'll close out today's conversation of the Stars and Predators crossover in just a bit. But before we do that, I want to take a moment and say thank you to another sponsor of today's episode, and that is BetOnline. BetOnline is back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Closing out today's crossover episode with Locked On Stars and Locked On Predators, I feel like kind of the last thing that we haven't really addressed yet is just, Nick, how this game is going to go overall. What are your predictions for the game as a whole, and ultimately maybe some score predictions? I know score predictions can be hard in the NHL because, some nights the team's hot, when it comes to scoring on offense, and sometimes the team goes ice cold. But what are your kind of overall thoughts on tonight's game and predictions?
I think the Predators are coming off sort of a weird game against Chicago. There was a game, I think a lot of people expected them to go into the United Center and just run up the score on them. That didn't happen. They looked a little lethargic. A lot of people said they were coming off the Western Canada trip and only had a day to rest. So they have a little bit more rest, and they're kind of in a little bit more of a neutral location, I guess, with Dallas as opposed to a 10 o'clock Central start time in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So I do think you're going to see a bounce back performance from the Predators in that regard. I mean, look, this is despite what people on Twitter and kind of what power rankings may say, Predators are a team loaded with talent. And right now, that talent is on fire. I mean, like Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, Mikael Granlund, Roman Josi, all of them are having fantastic starts to the year. And I think that makes the Predators a very dangerous team. And, I know you've kind of mentioned Dallas being in almost a similar situation right now with all this talent, but just kind of back and forth in terms of whether they can put it all together. So I do think you're going to see a bounce back game for the Predators. I think it's going to be one of those where, no team really looks 100% better than the other team. There's a lot of good chances both ways, a lot of solid defensive play at times. I think it's going to be an evenly matched game. I wouldn't be surprised if this wound up being like a 3-2 contest or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to, final score predictions. I think there's potential there could be offensive explosions, but like you said, I think there's a lot of talent kind of evenly spread throughout both rosters where, there's going to be good defensive play, but also, moments where maybe the defense breaks down, or it might be on, a power play, where goals kind of maybe come in bunches. But yeah, I think this is one of the more two of the more evenly matched teams, at least on paper. And obviously, time will tell once the game starts tonight, but in this division, because this division is so weird and competitive, people, including myself, had Colorado likely, kind of running away with this division, and then everyone else kind of fighting for, the other playoff spots besides maybe Arizona.
Yeah.
But, you look right now and Dallas and Nashville's at 4th, 13 points, Dallas with 10 at 5th, and Colorado's at 6th with 9 points. And obviously they haven't been fully healthy and they haven't reached their full potential yet. But yeah, I think this game has potential to be one of the more entertaining ones that at least Stars fans will have seen this season. And hopefully maybe not as heart attack inducing, but knowing the Stars, it likely will be. They are still looking for their first regulation win. The Stars only have 4 wins this season, but all 4 of them have come either in overtime or shootouts. So it'd be nice to maybe see, if the Stars are going to win, they do it in 60 minutes and a little less stress involved with that. But who knows? This team is, coming off a trip from Western Canada themselves with Winnipeg and then Calgary, Vancouver, and then now they're playing 3 games at home. And so this is a big game for the Stars to kind of set the tone for this homestand. And they're kind of looking to get back on track after it seems like they'd caught a little bit of momentum beating Calgary because, Calgary's off to a really, really nice start this season. And then, it looked like they just kind of took 2 steps back against Vancouver. So should be an entertaining game. Can't wait to see, what goes down and what the results, end up being.
Yeah, it feels like we said off the top, never a dull moment between the Predators and Stars. They've had some bangers over the past couple of years. So
they really have.
I would expect the rivalry to kind of heat up again and set the tone right off the bat this year. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. From, the 2019 playoffs to the Winter Classic and even to some games last season, like you said, a lot of bangers and instant classics put out from these teams over the years. But that's going to do it for today's crossover edition between the Locked On Stars and Locked On Predators podcast. Nick, thank you so much for joining me.
Dane, thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed that conversation that I got to have with Nick Morgan. I know I enjoyed it. Nick does a lot of great work with the Locked On Predators podcast. You can find Nick on Twitter. You can find his show on Twitter. Be sure to go check them out. His name, Nick Morgan, Locked On Predators podcast, if you want more insight on this Nashville team before tonight's big matchup. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Now go make your second listen of the day, the Locked On Bets podcast, your daily one-stop shop for all your sports gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Be sure to subscribe and follow the Locked On Stars podcast if you not do so already. Leave a review if you like what you hear. Drop a like and a comment on YouTube if you enjoy what you hear. You can follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis. That's at DANE 2_Lewis. You can also follow the show on Twitter just at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys again so much for listening and stopping by today. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow with a full breakdown and analysis of the matchup against the Nashville Predators.